Oh boy, that's kind of one of those big questions that takes multiple answers. You know, the problem is that there's no single solution to any of these problems. The reason people move is varied, but there are some key reasons. And one of the things that we try to do is to use our 4E agenda that we rely on in order to attack it. For example, one issue that has led to people moving out of the urban core is the lack of quality education. You know, police officers who used to live in the core of the city have moved either north of the river or out to the enclave in the southeast part of town where they can live in Kansas City and send their children to Lee Summit schools. You know, so you can't forget the impact of education on where people want to live. And now we've added to that burden of not delivering quality educational services by closing down a bunch of schools, which then further burdens the already deteriorating neighborhoods. And, you know, while people are talking about abandoned houses and boarded houses, now we got block size abandoned and boarded up buildings in the middle of some of those neighborhoods. That's not going to be good. That can't help. And then some of them have been sitting there for years. This is not a new phenomenon that started with Dr. Covington. Some of these buildings have been sitting there 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years and not going anywhere. Nothing's been done. Nobody's going to buy them. All right. Then you've got the other problem that if you solve those first two, then it doesn't matter because people are afraid that if they walk outside their house, they'll be killed because we got the crime issue. And what about jobs that you need to buy the house in the first place? All of these things are interrelated. And the neighborhoods will be best served when we start making headway on each of them. We have to address crime. We can't wait to get the education system in place or to get an efficient government. We have to do these things simultaneously. We can't go through another 106 murders and expect people to feel safe in this city. So we have to do things that put the police and the neighborhoods together so that they can address crime. We need community policing. We need a more diverse police force so that we have officers who look like the people they're policing. We need to find ways to get the police officers out of their car and on foot, or on foot would be good, or on bikes, in neighborhoods so that they can actually learn the names of the people in the neighborhoods, and the neighborhoods can learn their names. That's going to help with the flow of information. The flow of information will keep crime down. The West Side Can Center that has a program of that type has found a great reduction in crime. We need more of those around the city. The city has no direct jurisdiction over education, but it certainly has a moral jurisdiction, and it should have every financial incentive to get involved because, you know, it's a matter of either paying for education or incarceration. And you don't have to be a genius to figure out which of those two investments is going to have the best return. Not to mention the fact that there's something basically morally wrong with allowing children to go through a school system year after year, moving on up class to class, knowing full well that they're not being adequately educated to compete in this world. We're just asking them to cut their future short. It just doesn't make any sense. So we have to get engaged in that, pull together philanthropy, business, government, and try to find ways to provide early childhood education so children are impacted in a positive way in education as early as possible. If we can do it before birth, I'm fine with that. If we can do it at birth, that's cool. But when their intellectual capacity is 90% formed by the time they're 5, to wait until they're 5 or 6 is too late. We have to do things differently, and we have to make those choices. So that's how we're going to have people move back, but nobody's going to move back into the most perfect house in the middle of a neighborhood where they're afraid to leave. And young people like you are going to stay in areas where you know or believe you cannot adequately educate your children if and when you decide to have them. You're going to go, because something happens when you have a kid, you start thinking about them, and you start thinking about what it's going to take to raise them. So we have to provide better than what we're doing to get people to stay here and to keep young people in our neighborhoods so that there is stability.